Today was an eerie day in the stock market. There was a great pop higher after open, but what's fueling this might not be as sustainable as most might hope for. Towards the end of the day, we got a hard sell-off that'll make tomorrow high stakes. Get ready for an exciting trading day.
Jerome Powell came through for the Bulls today. Stocks shot higher and there was an amazing pop out of the SPY. Yes, we can see the SPY initially gapped down this morning, but we saw a great support bounce and the SPY ran all the way up to 665 around the end of the trading day. This mainly happened because Jerome Powell actually came out today and was a bit more dovish. He highlighted the eventual end of quantitative tightening, and he even said that the outlook hasn't really changed much from the September meeting. I personally thought that this was really good that Powell came out and said this, and obviously bulls did as well, as the market got bought up to the upside. And the market obviously liked Powell sticking to this script. It was the reason for a lot of today's buying pressure, and if Powell would have mentioned pause or tightening for slightly longer or something like that, I think that that's what would have brought upon more eventual selling pressure. But as of now, the market is still pricing in rate cuts at the next meeting, and Powell's dovishness today essentially confirmed this. There's a 96.7% chance of a cut at that October 29th meeting.
Yeah, so that was great to see, and that was the reason for the pop up, but the market didn't start out that strong this morning. We can see there was actually a pretty big gap down as U.S.-China trade tensions are getting worse, and as the day went on, they got even worse. But basically looking at the market from this morning, it was gapping down because China sanctioned American units of a South Korean shipping giant, threatening, more retaliation from the U.S. This effectively made it so Chinese organizations and individuals can't do business with, these U.S. subsidiaries. And then there was also some news as the day went on where basically Trade Representative Jameson Greer told CNBC that Trump was still going to meet President Xi Jinping at the South Korea APEC summit at the end of October. This is good, but where things really started to shift for the worse is towards the end of the day where we saw that sell-off. Tom, what is going on there?
Yeah, if we actually look at the SPY, right around the end of the day, it bounced off of that 665 resistance and ended up selling off pretty harshly at the end of the day there. What happened is that Trump actually came on Truth Social and posted about China purposefully not buying U.S. soybeans, saying that this is causing difficulty for farmers, and of course, he's hitting back at them. He's hitting back at them actually with cooking oil and other elements of trade as retribution, he's saying in his own words here. But as we go forward, it just seems like, Mike, that this situation between the U.S. and China started to kick off a little bit more today. We've been seeing a lot of selling pressure related to this week. If we go back to like an hourly chart, of course, that sell-off Friday was pretty nasty. We gapped down again this morning from this news, and I think that there's still a lot of fear with this situation continuing to boil over. And whenever I start to think about, okay, what's going to happen here, China is obviously not backing down either. They're saying that they're vowing to fight to the end, and at the same time, the U.S. is kind of saying the same thing. Both sides are saying that the ball is in their opponent's court.
Exactly. And if there is one main lesson the market has been trying to teach investors over these past few years and even all the way back to 2018 is that it hates tensions between the US and China. Of course, this recent pullback is because of tensions between the US and China. Of course, everything with the Liberation Day crash was of course, in a broader sense, but especially there was a lot of concern on how the tariff situation was going to end up with China. And of course, that mega crash from 2018 had a big impact as well. So as we look at the market right now, the main thing we want to be seeing is the relationship between the US and China improving, but it's doing the opposite right now. And right now it's like a battle of two big egos, and investors are certainly hoping that a deal gets made. But I'll tell you, Tom, with this recent news related to the soybean threat with cooking oil, plus the constant affirmation from China saying that we don't want a trade war, but we are happy to fight one to the end, it doesn't sit the best with me.
Me either. And that's a big problem right now whenever we look at the SPY and with the overall market because, we had that big drop down on Friday, right? The SPY closed down over 2% that day. That was a very nasty sell off. And the SPY is still within that overall range. We never really broke below the low from that day, which is 646. At the same time, we haven't even tested the highs of that day up around 673 to 674. So we've just been chopping around here the past couple days in between the range. And something I'm really watching is this overhead range from the past couple trading days. I really like this resistance around 665 to 666. It's bounced off of both of these levels, but you can tell that that is a clear resistance here in the short term, and the SPY really failed to break above there today with any real momentum, even whenever Powell spoke. At the same time, I really like the low from today, around 653 to 654. That was a pretty good bounce that we had there this morning, and then there is a good midpoint mixed in too, around 658, where you could see some price action. But again, that's more of a midpoint right here. I really just want to see the SPY get out of this overall chop zone though and start to pick an overall direction. And of course, I think that this is going to be news driven, but if things start to heat up and SPY puts pressure on that recent low of 646 to 648 and that ends up giving out, that is where the selling pressure, and I think as we would say, things would be boiling over at that point.
Yeah, and you pointed out a handful of key levels. I think by far the most important thing to pay attention to over these next 24 hours is how China retaliates. If they continue to escalate this situation, the market is not going to like that, and that is a big risk in the short term. And like you pointed out, that 646 to 648 level on SPY is the critical point right now. It would really hurt for those lows to give out, so definitely keep that in mind. Maybe in an optimistic world, maybe China, kind of tries to de-escalate this trade war situation, but that has not been the way they've been operating recently. So we shall see. We also have some interesting data from Goldman Sachs, basically showing that commodity trading advisors are projected to sell stocks in every single scenario over the next week and month. So, of course, this is an expectation, but we do have data from Goldman here showing that, we do have some, so-called smart money getting more inclined to sell off in the short term. And honestly, I can't blame people, especially considering how aggressive valuations still are and, how close we still are to all-time highs in a much broader sense.
Exactly. And, if we go back to the last time that the trade war started to heat up, back in April, of course, I know a lot of people were looking at those April lows, and that was a very scary time in the stock market. But, that sell-off started happening in like the middle to end of February. And as I start to look at this situation, I don't blame these advisors for doing this and looking at the market in a downwards way. I think it makes sense given valuation and where everything's at right now. But I will say, we are in year 4 of the bull market. I know that we've been looking at these stats the past couple trading days, and these do paint a bit of a prettier picture for the stock market, whereas in year 4, on average, the market goes green 85.7% of the time. And I gotta say, the average and median percent returns being 14% and 13% are pretty dang high. So that's a good sign on the bull side here. But again, it's all going to come down to what happens with this China situation, at least in the short term.
Definitely. So very exciting. Like you pointed out, we have some good bullish long-term stats, but we do have some, big risks and worrying signs in the short term. So let's keep both of these in mind. And then Tom, I know Powell's event was one of the main events of the week. Is there anything else for tomorrow?
There's really nothing on the radar for tomorrow, and then even the data for the rest of the week on Thursday and Friday, it's all up in the air right now with the government being shut down, and that data will probably ultimately be delayed. So keep that on the radar as well, potentially. But my favorite thing that's happening tomorrow in the stock market, besides, potential China headlines, is the earnings. ASML is reporting in pre-market. They essentially make the machines needed to make chips, and that's going to be big for the chip sector. So be ready for that. There could be a lot of chip stock action tomorrow morning. I also like Dollar Tree, Bank of America, and Morgan Stanley in pre-market, along with United Airlines in after hours. And I got to say, Mike, I can't wait for Thursday with Taiwan Semiconductors, especially following ASML tomorrow.
Yeah, that'll be big and exciting. But Tom, I'll even say today with the bank stocks definitely caught my attention too, because we saw a lot of these big banks like JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs report some pretty solid earnings data, but They fell. So that was definitely kind of like a worrying sign heading into earnings season, where we might see some stocks report some great earnings, but investors not be, pleased from it. So that's interesting. But how about we jump right into the fun stuff for today, which are some setups and predictions. A stock that is definitely on my radar is Nvidia, and it is to the downside. So I know this company is a powerhouse, but they were one of the weaker stocks in the market today, not only because they fell by nearly 4.5%, but also you'll notice that Nvidia, they closed very close to like their low of day, whereas when you look at like the market as a whole, ticker symbol SPY, it closed a lot closer to its high of day, which definitely piqued my interest, because we are seeing a little bit more of a stronger selling imbalance with Nvidia here. And while I think it's more likely than not to rise given the nature of this company, I think it offers a good asymmetric risk reward playing it to the downside, especially if we see a strong breakdown past its $180 area. And if plus like the cherry on top would be if we had some like negative China news as well. Nvidia is one of those stocks where when it has momentum, it moves big time. Its options are liquid, and it's at a critical support right now. So it is definitely on my bearish radar.
Now, this hasn't happened yet, but imagine China, they hit back with some chip restrictions or something.
God.
Then things would get really wild. But yeah, I'm going to be watching Nvidia very carefully. I love that 180 support. I've been watching it ever since that drop on Friday, and I've been watching it and waiting for a possible breakdown as well. But with my first play, I'm looking at Walmart. Yes, Walmart actually popped up quite well today, up 4.98%. I know people generally say Walmart is boring, but hey, they are the next company to partner with none other than OpenAI. And yes, if you're wondering how does OpenAI partner with Walmart, it's pretty insane. They're pretty much making it where you're going to be able to complete purchases from Walmart directly within ChatGPT. This is a pretty crazy situation. I'm not sure how much it's going to turn over into Walmart stock for the long term, but it definitely brought in some hype today. For a stock that moves pretty slow usually, moving up 5% in a day is pretty dang good. And if we look at the daily chart, Walmart actually just blasted above their all-time high, running up now to 108 just about. Now, if they can break out above 108 tomorrow, keep watching for more continuations. Today was day one of the breakout, so I'm definitely looking for a continuation style of pattern here.
Yeah, and as we know, over the past few years, there's basically no better news that you can get than AI news. And especially when you're partnering with like one of the top AI companies in the world, OpenAI, it definitely helps quite a bit. So let's keep that one close on watch. But another stock that is on my radar is SQQQ, and it's also to the upside. I know this one was mentioned yesterday, and it had like a decent move at open today, but definitely weakened quite a bit as the market popped up during the day. This is like a high risk, high reward setup where if we do see significant selling pressure come in tomorrow, SQQQ is one of those stocks that can do very well, as it has not only with the big pullback from March and April this year, but just like it did with many other big pullbacks of the past. It's definitely on my bullish radar, but it's one of those situations where you need real bearish momentum, because if the market's just chopping around, you'll get burned.
Yeah, and that's exactly what happened today, right? And I know a lot of traders identified that this morning. We saw the SPY. It was selling down right at open, but immediately when we got that V-shaped recovery start to come back in, looking at SQQQ, it started to fall back down like you said, but I will be keeping it on the radar as well. It can be really advantageous to play and really lucrative whenever the market does drop. But with my next setup, I'm looking at Tesla for a possible 435 breakout. Yes, this is a bit of a different type of setup here in the short term. I'm identifying Tesla having a downtrend here over the past few trading days following Friday's sell-off. It's been posting slightly lower highs the past couple trading days as well. And if we're able to break above the high of day from yesterday, close to 435 to 436, then watch it to the upside. There is a huge sell wall at this 435 point. There's around 86,000 shares that were stacked up there today. If we start to rip above 435, watch for a possible 440 test to come into play. Now, keep in mind, if China has the market tanking tomorrow, and if Tesla is not breaking out through their downtrend here, then there's a no play, and you might even have to adapt to the downside. If I start to see 417 to 420 support give out, that's where I'll be looking to adapt.
Sounds good. All right, well, let's jump right into today's momentum plays then. And with the first one, we have Nano Dimension, ticker symbol NNDM, to the upside.
Yeah, pretty nice pop today, over 10%. If NNDM can break out above $2.10, then watch it up.
With the next one, we have Teladoc, ticker symbol TDOC, also to the upside.
Yeah, another big mover, up 8.2% today. If it can break out just above $9 at $9.02, then watch it up as well.
And then with the last one, we have CoreWeave, ticker symbol CRWV, to the downside.
This one kind of looks like NVIDIA from today. My gosh, yeah, down almost 5% too. If it ends up falling down under 133, which is a good intraday support, it's not the low of day, but it's a good intraday support, then watch it down.
All right, so we have these three stocks on the radar for potential continuations tomorrow, if and only if they break through the levels listed. As always, these stocks are volatile, so you need to protect yourself. Whether you look at one of these three stocks or anything else, focus on making smart, long-term oriented trading decisions. You can learn how to do that for free in the Key Lessons channel of the StockedUp Discord, so check that out if you want. And besides that, let's jump right into today's $449,000 big money trade. And we are looking at ticker symbol LNTH. Very interesting setup here today, where the trader here bought the 60 strike call options for November 21st of 2025. This is a high risk, high reward setup. Basically, LNTH has been struggling quite a bit over the past year or so, and over the past couple of weeks, it has been holding this $50 support in a very strong way, which is great. But these call options are a little bit far out of the money at the 60 strike, and they don't have a ton of time to them, and the market is relatively weak. Pharmaceutical companies like LNTH have the ability to move significantly based off any treatment updates or FDA approvals or anything like that. But again, it's a high risk, high reward situation. I like the support bounce, but that 60 strike call option is a little bit risky.
Yeah, it really is. It's pretty far out of the money, being around $5 out of the money from today's closing price. But whenever I look at LNTH, it has been pretty volatile down here in the bottom of this range, bouncing off of here multiple times. And the upper end of the range is around 60. And there are a couple of big gaps to fill on LNTH's chart. If it starts to fill this gap back to the upside to around 68 to 70, that would put this in the money by a pretty good amount. Overall, though, Mike, I really like the support range here. It's one of those types of plays where if it starts to break through support, I feel like you can cut it pretty quickly. Now, again, that would be a $5 drop down to that $50 point. But if you do target like the overhead, gap fill here around 68 to 70, then it makes the risk reward pretty advantageous for you.
Definitely. So either way, keep it close on watch. It's an interesting setup. And if you are new to the channel, welcome, and consider destroying that subscribe button. It takes us multiple hours every single day to basically research and cover everything you need to know in the stock market, whether it be recent China updates, what's going on with Jerome Powell, SPY levels and analysis, important earnings, events, historical data, or basically anything else. If you subscribe to our videos, you'll get our videos recommended to you more often, which is always nice. We post for every single trading day, so consider doing that if you haven't already. And besides that, let's give a giant shout out to today's member of the day, Floriner in the StockedUp Discord, who really crushed it today. They made $11,000 in 2 days. They said mostly from NVTS call options. They said been trading stocks for a few years, but this is my 4th day trading options. So far, I'm stocked up for joining this platform. So huge shout out to you. Keep up the great work going forward, and that is awesome to see. Yeah, it's definitely going to be an interesting day in the market tomorrow. What China does next will have a huge impact on what happens next. And of course, we do have a lot of key levels that we are very close to with SPY. So it should be a very interesting trading day. If you guys are into short-term trading, definitely check out that first link in the description and the comments down below to get in on the StockedUp trading floor. That way you can see the big money trades we talk about every single day before the market closes, as well as chat with Town and myself all day long, join our weekly live events, access our army of custom trading bots, and so much more. Coupon code BIGMONEY will get you in at the lowest price possible. Thank you all so much for watching, and let's crush it in the market tomorrow.